Minho had never wanted to be a diplomat. He fixed machines, not political problems. He understood circuits and translation equipment, not alien customs or fancy words. But here he was, wearing a suit that felt too tight, standing outside the grand ballroom of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge. His hands were shaking. Just go in there and smile, Ji-won had told him 20 minutes ago. She was his supervisor, and she looked more stressed than he felt. The real diplomat ate something bad. You just need to stand there, nod, and don't say anything stupid. Can you do that? Minho had nodded, but he wasn't sure he could actually do that. The doors opened, and he stepped inside. The ballroom was huge, with a ceiling that showed the stars outside. There were aliens everywhere. Big ones, small ones, ones that floated, ones that looked like walking rocks. Minho's brain started screaming at him to run away. He grabbed a glass of something blue from a passing tray. It tasted like soap, but he drank it anyway. His throat felt dry. There were at least 50 different species in this room, and every single one of them knew more about diplomacy than he did. Breathe, he whispered to himself. Just breathe and don't mess this up. That's when he saw her. She was tall, taller than any human, with skin that looked like liquid silver. It seemed to glow softly under the lights. Her hair was long and dark, almost black, but with hints of deep purple. But it was her eyes that made Minho freeze in place. They were red. Not like human red eyes from crying or allergies, but actually glowing crimson, like someone had put lights inside her skull. She was beautiful in a way that made his brain stop working properly. Minho knew about the Volrathi. Everyone did. They were one of the oldest species in the Galactic Coalition, and people called them space vampires because they fed on some kind of enzyme found in rare minerals. They lived for hundreds of years and were known for being cold, calculating, and extremely political. This had to be Lady Aravel, the Volrathi representative. She was walking toward him. Minho's heart started beating so fast he thought it might explode. His palms were sweating. The blue drink sloshed in his glass. He tried to remember anything Ji-won had told him about meeting important aliens. Bow. No, wait. That was for the Keltorians. Smile? Do Volrathi even understand smiling? Representative of Earth, Aravel said. Her voice was smooth and had a musical quality to it. I am honored to finally meet your species. She turned slightly, gesturing toward the massive viewing port that showed the stars. The movement was graceful, like a dancer. Minho's eyes followed the gesture, and for just a second, his panicked brain noticed that even through her formal diplomatic robes, he could see his mouth opened before his brain could stop it. You have a nice ass. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Everything stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. Somewhere across the room, an alien dropped their drink. The translation devices on everyone's collars had picked up his words and broadcast them to every species in the room. Aravel turned slowly, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Her expression was completely blank. Minho wanted to die. He wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. He wanted to travel back in time and punch himself in the mouth before he could speak. His face felt like it was on fire. I didn't, that's not, he stammered. Then Aravel laughed. It wasn't a small laugh. It was a real, genuine laugh that sounded like bells ringing. Her whole face changed. The cold, diplomatic mask vanished, and for a moment, she looked almost human in her amusement. Your species' mating rituals are refreshingly direct, she said, still smiling. I accept your courtship challenge. What? Minho squeaked. Before he could say anything else, Aravel reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were cool, and where they touched his skin, a soft silver glow appeared. It spread across the back of his hand like tattoo ink flowing under his skin, forming a complex pattern that looked like twisted vines. The bonding mark, someone whispered nearby. Minho stared at his hand in horror. Wait, no, that was a mistake. I didn't mean. But Aravel was already turning away, speaking to the other diplomats around them. It seems Earth's representative has chosen to honor me with a courtship declaration. How delightful. From across the room, Minho saw Jiwon. Her face had gone completely white. She looked like she might faint. An alien that looked like a walking crystal approached Minho. Do you understand what you've done, human? No, Minho said honestly. His voice came out as a whisper. The Vilrathi bonding mark is a formal declaration of romantic intent, the crystal alien explained. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. Once given and accepted, it cannot be broken without severe diplomatic consequences. You have 30 days to complete the traditional courtship challenges, or your species' petition to join the Galactic Coalition will be seriously damaged. Minho felt his knees go weak. 30 days? 3 challenges, the alien continued. Physical, cultural, and emotional trials to prove your worth as a potential mate. The Vilrathi take courtship very seriously. If you fail, or if you attempt to withdraw, it will be seen as a grave insult. Across the room, Aravel was accepting congratulations from other aliens. She looked perfectly calm and collected, like she hadn't just turned Minho's entire life upside down. Jiwon finally reached him. She grabbed his arm hard enough to hurt. My office, now. As she dragged him toward the exit, Minho caught one last glimpse of Aravel. She was watching him, those glowing red eyes fixed on his face. And unless he was imagining things, she looked amused. In Jiwon's office, his supervisor paced back and forth while Minho sat with his head in his hands. You told a Vilrathi lady she has a nice ass, Jiwon said. She sounded like she couldn't believe her own words. You told a Vilrathi lady. I know, Minho said miserably. I panicked. My brain just stopped working, and do you have any idea how many humans wanted this assignment? How many trained diplomats would kill for the chance to represent Earth at the Coalition Summit? Jiwon stopped pacing and looked at him. And you just turned it into a courtship ritual. Minho looked at the mark on his hand. It was still glowing softly. What happens if I fail the challenges? Jiwon sighed and sat down. Best case? You're humiliated and sent home. Worst case? The Vilrathi take it as an insult, withdraw their support for human membership, and Earth stays isolated from the galactic community for another generation. So no pressure, Minho said weakly. His communicator buzzed. There was a message in flowing script that his translator struggled to render into Korean. The first challenge begins tomorrow at dawn. Rest well, Minho of Earth. You'll need your strength. Minho stared at the message. Tomorrow. He had less than 24 hours to prepare for something he didn't understand. To impress someone he'd accidentally insulted. To somehow save humanity's chance at joining the greater galaxy. All because his stupid mouth had betrayed him at the worst possible moment. He looked at Jiwon. I'm going to fail, aren't I? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, maybe. But you're going to try anyway, because that's all we can do now. That night, Minho lay in his quarters, unable to sleep. The mark on his hand pulsed softly in the darkness. Somewhere on this ship, Aravel was probably sleeping peacefully, completely in control of the situation she'd created. And Minho, who just wanted to fix translation equipment and live a quiet life, was now stuck in an alien courtship ritual that could determine the future of the entire human race. He closed his eyes and tried not to think about tomorrow. It didn't work. Minho woke up to screaming. He shot out of bed, heart pounding, looking for danger. Then he realized the screaming was laughter, and it was coming from outside his door. He opened it carefully. His door was completely covered in flowers. Except they weren't normal flowers. These glowed in the dark, pulsing with soft blue and purple light. And they were projecting images holograms of Aravel's face, smiling down at him from every angle. "Oh no," Minho whispered. "Oh, yes." That was Doyan, his friend from the engineering department. He was standing in the hallway with his communicator out, recording everything. "This is the best thing I've ever seen." "Stop recording," Minho hissed, trying to pull the flowers down. His hands went right through them. They were holographic projections, anchored to actual tiny flowers stuck to his door. "Help me get these down." Diane was laughing too hard to be useful. "Courtship flowers." "Dude, she sent you courtship flowers. Do you know how rare these are?" "I don't care how rare they are." Minho grabbed one of the small physical flowers. It felt warm and seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. "I need to figure out what the challenges are, and I need to do it before." His communicator buzzed. "Message from Aravel. Meet me at the biodome entrance in 1 hour. Wear comfortable clothing. Bring nothing else." Minho showed the message to Doyan. His friend's smile faded. "The biodome? That's where they keep dangerous alien plants and animals for training exercises." "Training for what?" "Survival scenarios." Diane looked worried now. "Minho, what exactly are these challenges?" That's what Minho spent the next 45 minutes trying to figure out. He sat in his quarters with Diane, scrolling through every file about Velrathi culture in the ship's database. There wasn't much. The Velrathi were private about their courtship rituals. "Here," Diane said, pointing at a screen. "The hunt of worthiness. The first traditional challenge. The potential mate must track the Velrathi through difficult terrain using no technology, only primitive tools and their own skills." Minho felt sick. "I'm a technician. I use technology for everything." "Yeah, but you're also really good at solving puzzles," Doyan said. "Remember when you figured out that bug in the life support system? You tracked down the problem through like 6 different subsystems. That's completely different." "Is it?" Doyan looked at him seriously. "Tracking is tracking. You find clues, you follow patterns, you solve the puzzle. You can do this." Minho wasn't so sure, but he didn't have a choice. He changed into comfortable clothes and headed to the biodome. His stomach felt like it was full of rocks. The biodome was enormous. It was designed to simulate different planetary environments for training purposes. Through the entrance windows, Minho could see forests, rocky areas, even a small lake. It covered at least 5 square kilometers. Aravel was waiting at the entrance. She wasn't wearing her formal robes anymore. Instead, she had on something that looked like hunting gear, tight-fitting dark, material that seemed to shift colors to match her surroundings. She looked even more intimidating than she had at the reception. "Minho of Earth," she said, her glowing eyes fixed on him. "Are you ready?" "No," he said honestly. She smiled a little. "Honesty. Good. That will serve you better than false confidence." She gestured to a table nearby. On it were primitive tools, a knife, rope, something that looked like a compass, but alien, and a small container of water. "These are your only resources. I will enter the biodome and hide. You have 6 hours to find me. Most fail. What happens if I fail? Then you prove yourself unworthy of the courtship, and we move to the second challenge. Fail all 3, and the bonding ends in humiliation." She tilted her head. "But I don't think you'll fail." "Why not?" "Because you're terrified, and terrified humans are surprisingly resourceful." She walked past him toward the biodome entrance. "I'll give you a 10-minute head start. Use it to think, not to panic." Then she was gone, disappearing into the artificial forest like a ghost. Minho stood there, staring at the primitive tools. Around him, a small crowd had gathered, other diplomats and crew members who wanted to watch. He saw Ji-Wan in the crowd, looking worried. He saw Ambassador Tai Wu, the senior human diplomat who had recovered from his illness. Tai Wu nodded at him, ENCOURAGINGL. Why not no pressure? Just the future of humanity depending on him finding one alien woman in 5 square kilometers of dangerous terrain using Stone Age technology. He picked up the tools and entered. Bio-Dome. The forest was thick and humid. Strange plants grew everywhere, some with leaves bigger than Minho's whole body. He could hear animal sounds, clicks, whistles, roars from deeper in. His hands were already sweating. Think, he muttered to himself. Don't panic. Think. Aravel was Velrathi. What did he know about them? They lived for centuries. They consumed enzymes through their skin. They had better senses than humans. And they were hunters by nature. Their ancestors had been apex predators on their home world. So how do you track an apex predator? You don't track them directly. You track their impact on the environment. Minho started looking at the ground. The soil was soft here, and there a footprint. Small and light, barely visible. Aravel had gone this way. He followed, moving slowly, looking for signs. Broken twigs, disturbed leaves, places where the natural pattern of the forest was interrupted. 2 hours in, he found something interesting. A group of small alien creatures, things that looked like 6-legged rabbits, were all huddled in one area, avoiding a particular section of the forest. Prey animals. They were staying away from the predator. Minho circled around that section, looking for more signs. There were water droplets on leaves that shouldn't be wet. The morning dew had dried hours ago. Someone had passed through here recently. He was getting closer. 3 hours in, he realized something else. Aravel was testing him, but she also wanted to be found. A real hunt would have been impossible. She could have hidden anywhere, covered her tracks completely. But she was leaving just enough clues for someone smart to follow. She was playing with him. Seeing how he thought. 4 hours in, he found her scent. It was faint, like ozone and something sweet. His human nose could barely detect it, but it was there. He followed it to a rocky outcropping near the artificial lake, and there she was. Aravel sat on a rock, looking completely relaxed. When she saw him, she smiled. 4 hours and 17 minutes. The previous record was 5 hours and 40 minutes, held by a Keltorian warrior. Minho collapsed on the ground, breathing hard. I did it? You did it. She stood up and walked over to him. You track like a predator thinks, not like prey reacts. You anticipated my movements. Impressive for a species so young. She offered him her hand. He took it, and she pulled him to his feet easily. Her strength was surprising. The first challenge is complete, she said. But don't celebrate yet. The second challenge begins tomorrow. She leaned closer, and Minho's heart started racing again. It will test whether you can truly understand my culture. Many fail because they cannot bridge the gap between species. What is it? Minho asked. The Feast of Acceptance. You must prepare a meal that honors both our peoples. And you must share it with me while we speak of our histories. Her glowing eyes seemed to look right through him. It's harder than it sounds. Then she walked away, leaving Minho standing by the lake. Exhausted, but somehow feeling like he'd actually accomplished something impossible. When he exited the biodome, the crowd applauded. Diane rushed over and hugged him. You did it! You actually did it. Ji-Wan looked relieved. Even Ambassador Tai Wu was smiling, but Minho's mind was already on the next challenge. A feast? He could barely cook for himself, let alone prepare something that would honor an ancient alien culture. That night, he met with Diane and another friend, Suji, who worked in the research department. They crowded into Minho's quarters with their tablets and communicators, looking up information on Volrathi diet and human cooking. This is impossible, Minho said, reading about Volrathi enzyme requirements. They absorb nutrients through their skin. The food has to have specific chemical compounds that humans find disgusting to smell. Wait, Suji said, scrolling through her tablet. Look at this. Fermentation. Some fermented foods produce similar enzyme chains. And humans have been fermenting food for thousands of years. Doyun snapped his fingers. Kimchi, Korean fermentation techniques. They worked late into the night, researching, planning, trying to figure out how to bridge the gap between two completely different biologies. Minho felt exhausted, but also, strangely, excited. He was solving a puzzle. And maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand Aravel a little better. She was testing him, yes. But she was also teaching him, showing him that understanding between species was possible if you were willing to try. The kitchen staff looked at Minho like he was crazy. You want to use our kitchen to cook. What exactly? The head chef, a human woman named Kyung, stared at the list of ingredients he'd given her. A fusion meal, Minho said. Korean fermented dishes combined with Volrathi enzyme supplements. For the second challenge, Kyung read through the list again. Kimchi doenjang gochujang. Okay, we have these. But these Volrathi compounds. She pointed at several items. These smell like rotting metal. You really want to mix them with food? I don't have a choice. Kyung sighed but nodded. Okay, but I'm helping you. I'm not letting you poison a Volrathi dignitary in my kitchen. They work for hours. Minho had never been much of a cook, but Kyung was patient. She showed him how to prepare the base ingredients, how to balance the flavors, how to make sure the enzyme compounds would integrate properly without making everything taste horrible. The trick with fermentation, Kyung explained, is understanding that what smells bad to us might smell amazing to someone else. Different species, different noses, different chemistry. Suji stopped by to check the chemical composition. She ran tests on the food samples, making sure the enzyme levels would be acceptable for Volrathi biology. This should work, she said. The fermentation process creates similar compounds to what they need. It's actually genius. You're bridging the gap between species, using one of humanity's oldest food preservation techniques. Diane showed up with decorations. If you're doing a formal dinner, you need to set the mood, right? I don't even know where we're having this dinner, Minho said. His communicator buzzed. Message from Aravel. Private dining room 7. Tonight at sunset. Come alone. Private dining room. Just the two of them. Minho's hand started shaking again. Hey, Kyung put a hand on his shoulder. You've got this. The food is good. Just be yourself. Being myself is what got me into this mess, Minho muttered. That evening, Minho carried the carefully prepared dishes to dining room 7. It was smaller than he expected, with a window showing the stars and a simple table set for two. The lighting was soft, almost romantic. Aravel was already there. She wore a simple dark dress that seemed to shimmer when she moved. Without all the formal diplomatic gear, she looked different. Younger, somehow, even though Minho knew she was over 300 years old. You came, she said. Did you think I wouldn't? I wasn't sure. Many suitors flee before the second challenge. She gestured to the table. What have you prepared? Minho set out the dishes, explaining each one. This is kimchi fermented vegetables with spices. This is doenjang jjigae fermented soybean stew. And this, he pointed to a dish that shimmered slightly, is my attempt to combine Korean fermentation with Volrathi enzyme supplements. Aravel leaned over the dishes. Her nose wrinkled slightly, then smoothed out. Interesting. The smell is complex. They sat down. Minho watched nervously as Aravel took her first bite. She chewed slowly, thoughtfully. Then she smiled. "This is remarkable," she said. "I can taste your world's history in this food. Preservation techniques born from necessity. Flavors that speak of survival and innovation." She took another bite. "Tell me about Earth's fermentation history." So Minho did. He talked about how ancient Koreans developed kimchi to preserve vegetables through harsh winters. How fermentation became essential to human survival before refrigeration. How different cultures around the world developed their own fermented foods. Aravel listened intently, and then she began to share. She told him about Velrathi food culture, how her people learned to draw enzymes from their dying sun, how they developed techniques to store these enzymes in crystalline form, how food for Velrathi was about energy and survival on a cosmic scale. "We're not so different," Minho said quietly. "Both our species learned to survive by transforming what we had into what we needed." "No," Aravel said. "We're very different. But that's what makes this interesting." As they ate, Minho felt his nervousness fading. Aravel wasn't the cold, intimidating diplomat from the reception. She was curious, thoughtful, and she seemed genuinely interested in what he had to say. "Why did you really accept my challenge?" Minho finally asked. Yuko laughed it off as a cultural misunderstanding. Aravel was quiet for a long moment. She looked out at the stars. "Do you know how old I am, Minho?" 307 years, he said. I looked it up. 307 years of diplomatic meetings, of calculated responses, of saying exactly what others expect to hear. She turned to look at him. "And then you, a terrified human who had no idea what he was doing, looked at me and said the first genuine thing anyone has said to me in decades, that I have a nice ass?" She laughed. "That you found me attractive. Not politically useful. Not strategically valuable. Just attractive." It was refreshingly honest. Minho felt his face heat up. "I didn't mean to. I know. That's what made it perfect." She reached across the table and touched his hand. Her fingers were cool. "You saw me, Minho. Not Lodi Aravel of the Velrathi Empire. Just me." They talked for hours. About their worlds, their families, their hopes. Minho learned that Aravel had siblings, 6 of them, all older, all more politically successful. He learned that she loved music but rarely had time to listen to it. He learned that she'd been to 40 different worlds, but had never felt at home on any of them. She learned about his family on Earth, his parents who worked in agriculture, his sister who was studying medicine, his childhood dream of exploring space, and how he'd ended up fixing translation equipment instead. "You're better at diplomacy than you think," Arvel said. "Real diplomacy isn't about perfect words. It's about genuine connection." But then Minho's communicator buzzed. A message from Jiwon. "We have a problem. Come to conference room 3 immediately." Aravel saw his expression change. "What's wrong?" "I don't know." But Jiwon wouldn't interrupt unless it was serious. They left the dining room together. The corridors felt too empty, too quiet. Something was wrong. Conference room 3 was full of people. Jiwon was there, looking grim. Ambassador Taiwu was there too, along with several other human diplomats. And there were aliens Minho didn't recognize, tall, gray-skinned beings with too many arms. "Zelvik," Aravel whispered. "This is bad." One of the Zelvik spoke. Its voice was translated as flat and emotionless. "The human's courtship of Lady Aravel is a transparent attempt to manipulate Velrathi support for human coalition membership. We demand the bonding be dissolved immediately." "On what grounds?" Aravel's voice was cold, the diplomatic mask back in place. "On the grounds that it was begun in deception. The human's words were not genuine courtship. They were an accident, a mistake. Therefore, the entire bonding is fraudulent." Minho felt his stomach drop. They were right. It had been an accident. A stupid panic mistake. Ambassador Tai Wu stepped forward. The bonding was accepted by Lady Aravel herself. She chose to interpret the human's words as courtship, because she was deceived by his appearance of sincerity. The Zelvik turned its multiple eyes on Minho. Tell the truth, human. Did you intend to court Lady Aravel when you spoke to her? Everyone was staring at him. Minho looked at Aravel. Her glowing eyes were unreadable. No, Minho said quietly. I didn't intend to court her. I panicked and said something stupid. The room erupted. The Zelvik looked triumphant. The human diplomats looked horrified. Jiwan put her head in her hands, but Aravel was smiling. He's right, she said loudly, and everyone went quiet. His initial words were not intended as courtship. They were an accident born from panic. She walked over to Minho. But I didn't accept his words. I accepted his honesty, his genuine, unfiltered reaction to me. That is what I found worthy of courtship. You cannot court someone based on their mistakes. The Zelvik protested. I can court anyone I choose, for any reason I choose, Aravel said coldly. And I choose to continue this bonding because Minho has shown me something I haven't experienced in centuries' authenticity. If you have a problem with that, take it up with the Velrathi Council. The Zelvik backed down, but Minho could see they weren't happy. As the meeting dispersed, one of them passed close to Minho and whispered, "This isn't over, human." Later, back in his quarters, Minho sat alone, trying to process everything. His communicator buzzed. Message from Aravel. Don't worry about the Zelvik. They're always causing trouble. Rest well. The third challenge comes soon. But Minho couldn't rest. The Zelvik had been right. This entire thing started as a mistake. What if he was just making everything worse? His door chimed. It was Doyen. His friend sat down next to him. You okay? I don't know, Minho said. This is getting complicated. Yeah, Doyen agreed. But you know what? You're handling it better than anyone expected, including yourself. Minho hoped that was true, because the third challenge was coming, and he had a feeling it would be the hardest one yet. The next day, Minho couldn't find Aravel anywhere. Her quarters were sealed. When he asked the ship's staff, they said she was in meetings. Lorethi security stood outside her section of the ship, refusing to let anyone pass. Even his messages went unanswered. Something's wrong, Minho told Doyen and Suji. They were sitting in the ship's small cafeteria, and he'd barely touched his food. The third challenge was supposed to start today. Suji checked her tablet. There are sealed negotiations happening. High-level stuff. The Zelvik filed formal complaints with the coalition about the bonding. Can they actually stop it? Minho asked. Maybe, Suji said quietly. If they convince enough species that the bonding is politically motivated rather than genuine, they could force it to be dissolved. Minho felt sick. Not because of what it would mean for Earth's coalition membership, but because he realized he didn't want the bonding to end. Somewhere over the past few days, between the hunt and the dinner and their conversations, he'd started to actually care about Aravel. Not as a political necessity, but as a person. Onji, a security officer and Minho's friend, sat down with them. She looked worried. I've been hearing things. The Zelvik are putting serious pressure on the Volrathi delegation. They're saying that if the bonding continues, they'll block all Volrathi trade agreements in 3 sectors. Why do they care so much? Doyen asked. Because if humans get into the coalition with Volrathi support, it shifts the whole political balance, Unji explained. The Zelvik have been the dominant power in their region for centuries. They don't want competition. Minho pushed his plate away. So I'm not just risking my own future. I'm risking Aravel's political standing and her people's economy. Maybe, Yunji admitted. But that's not your fault. You didn't ask for any of this. That didn't make Minho feel better. That evening, an announcement came over the ship's communication system. All diplomatic personnel and interested parties, please report to the Coalition Assembly Chamber. The final courtship challenge will commence in 1 hour. Minho's heart started pounding. The third challenge, the vulnerability of truth. He'd read about it. Both parties had to stand before the entire Coalition Assembly and declare their genuine feelings and intentions. There would be empathic judges called the Satori, crystalline beings who could sense deception. Any lie, any half-truth, would be detected immediately. He had 1 hour to figure out what he was going to say. The assembly chamber was massive. It was circular, with platforms for each species arranged in tiers going up to the ceiling. In the center were 2 raised platforms with a gap between them, one for Minho, one for Aravel. Floating in the space between were 3 Satori, crystal beings that pulsed with soft light. The chamber was packed. Every species wanted to see this. Minho saw Ambassador Taiwu in the Earth section. Jiwan was there too, looking nervous. And in another section, the Zelvik watched with their multiple eyes, looking satisfied. Minho stood on his platform. His legs felt weak. Across the gap, Aravel emerged onto her platform. She looked beautiful and regal in her formal robes. Her glowing eyes found his, and for just a moment, he saw something in them. Fear? Uncertainty? But then the diplomatic mask was back. A voice echoed through the chamber, translated into every language. The third challenge begins. Minho of Earth, you will speak first. Tell us your truth. Minho's mouth was dry. He looked out at hundreds of alien faces watching him. The future of humanity's place in the galaxy rested on what he said next. He could feel the Satori focusing on him. Their crystalline forms glowing brighter. He could lie. He could say everything they wanted to hear. Say that he'd courted Aravel with noble intentions. Say that he was worthy of this bonding. But the story would know. And more importantly, Aravel would know. I'm a fraud, Minho said. His voice cracked, but he kept going. I'm not a diplomat. I fix machines. I was never supposed to be at that reception. I was terrified, and when Lady Aravel spoke to me, my brain stopped working, and I said something incredibly stupid. He heard murmurs through the chamber. The Zelvik looked pleased. I've spent the last few days trying to prove I'm worthy of this courtship, but the truth is, I don't know if I am. I don't know if anyone can really know another person after just a few days, especially when they're from different species. He looked at Aravel. But I know that I've learned more in the past week than in years of studying. I've learned that different doesn't mean wrong. That fear can turn into curiosity. That connection is possible, even when it seems impossible. The Satori's glow intensified. They were reading him, sensing every emotion. I don't know if what I feel is love, Minho continued. Humans barely know each other after a week. But I know that when I couldn't find Aravel today, I was scared. Not for my career or Earth's future, but for her. I wanted to know she was okay. I wanted to hear her laugh again. I wanted to keep learning about her world and showing her mine. He took a breath. So here's my truth. I'm not a good diplomat. I'm not smooth or political. I'll probably keep saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. But everything I've shown you these past days has been real. The panic, the effort, the interest, all of it. And if that's not enough, then I'd rather fail honestly than succeed as a liar. Silence filled the chamber. The Satori pulsed once, twice, 3 times. Then one of them spoke. Truth recognized. Emotional authenticity confirmed. Now all eyes turned to Era single quotes VL. She stood straight, her hands clasped in front of her. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. I am 307 years old, she said. In that time, I have been courted by warriors, by merchants, by politicians, by royalty, Every single one of them wanted something from me. Power, connections, status. Every single one of them performed for me, showing me the person they thought I wanted to see. She paused. And then I met Minho, a human who was so terrified of me that he forgot to be political, who saw me and panicked. And I realized I hadn't felt anything genuine in decades. Everything in my life is calculated, measured, performed. But his panic was real. Aravel's voice softened. The challenges weren't really for him. They were for me. To see if I could still feel something spontaneous after 3 centuries of political maneuvering. To see if I could remember what it was like to simply react, to simply feel, without wondering about the political implications. She looked directly at Minho. This human terrified me more than he knows. Not because of his words, but because of what his authenticity made me realize. I'd been performing my own life for so long. I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be myself. The chamber was completely silent now. So my truth is this, Aravel said. I don't know if this bonding will last. I don't know if we can bridge the gap between a species that lives 70 years and one that lives 400. But Minho made me feel something I haven't felt in a very long time. Curiosity about another person. Not what they can do for me politically, but who they actually are. And that's worth exploring, even if it's complicated. Even if it's imperfect. The Satori glowed bright. Truth recognized. Emotional authenticity confirmed. One of the coalition judges, a being that looked like walking smoke, stood. The challenges are complete. Both parties have shown. That's when the explosion happened. The blast came from the Zelvic section. Fire and smoke filled the chamber. Alarms screamed. People started running. Through the chaos, Minho saw figures moving toward Aravel's platform. Zelvic, operatives with weapons. They were going to kill her. Minho didn't think. His brain didn't have time to panic or second guess. He just jumped out. The gap between the platforms was 3 meters. Minho launched himself across it, arms outstretched. Time seemed to slow down. He saw Aravel turn, saw her eyes go wide. He saw the weapon charging, aimed at her chest. He hit her just as the plasma bolt fired. They went down together, rolling on the platform. Heat seared across Minho's back as the bolt caught him instead of her. Pain exploded through his body, white-hot and overwhelming. Everything went fuzzy. He could hear shouting, more weapons fire, security forces responding. But it all seemed distant, like he was underwater. Aravel's face appeared above him. Her diplomatic mask was gone. She looked genuinely terrified. Minho, don't you dare die. Don't you? She bit her own wrist. Purple blood welled up. She pressed it to his lips. Drink. It's a healing ritual. Drink. The blood tasted like metal and starlight. Minho's vision started fading. The last thing he saw was Aravel's glowing eyes, filled with an emotion he'd never seen there before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. For him, then everything went black. Minho woke up to white lights and the smell of antiseptic. He was in the medical bay. Everything hurt, but in a distant way, like the pain was happening to someone else's body. You're awake. That was Kyung, the chef who'd helped him cook. Except she was wearing medical scrubs now. I'm also the ship's doctor. Surprise. What happened? Minho's voice came out as a croak. You jumped across a 3-meter gap to save a Velrathi dignitary from assassination and took a plasma bolt to the back. Kyung checked the monitors next to his bed. You should be dead, but Lady Aravel performed an emergency healing ritual. She gave you some of her blood. Minho tried to sit up. Pain shot through him, and he fell back. Is she okay? She's fine. You took the hit meant for her. Kyung gave him a serious look. The Zelvic operatives were captured. Turns out they were planning to kill Aravel and frame humans for it. would have destroyed both the bonding and Earth's chance at coalition membership. Minho struggled to process it. That's insane. Politics often is. Kyung adjusted something on one of the machines. But here's the thing you should know. That healing ritual Aravel performed? It created a biological bond between you two. Your biochemistries are now partially linked. What does that mean? It means you'll need regular enzyme treatments for the rest of your life. Or, Kyung paused. Regular contact with Aravel. Her presence will naturally regulate the enzymes in your system now. Minho stared at the ceiling. So I'm permanently connected to her. Biologically speaking, yes. Kyung smiled slightly. But from what I saw, you two were pretty connected already. Over the next 3 days, Minho stayed in Medical Bay. He had visitors constantly. Diane came by and told him he was an idiot hero. Suji brought him files about human Velrathi biochemistry. Yoonji reported that the Zelvik conspiracy went high up in their government. Several officials were being arrested. Ambassador Taiwu came personally to thank him. What you did was incredibly reckless and incredibly brave, he said. Earth's petition has been approved, by the way. The coalition was so impressed by your actions that they fast-tracked our membership. Because I jumped? Minho asked. Because you proved that humans act based on compassion, not calculation. You didn't save Aravel for political reasons. You saved her because it was right. Taiwu smiled. That's exactly the kind of species the coalition wants. But the person Minho most wanted to see didn't come. Aravel stayed away. He sent messages, but got no response. After the 3rd day, he started to worry that something was wrong. Finally, on the 4th day, Jiwon came to see him. She looked uncomfortable. Aravel asked me to tell you something, she said. She's being recalled to the Velrathi home world. There are political situations she needs to handle. She'll be gone for at least 6 months. Minho felt something twist in his chest. She's leaving? Just like that? It's complicated, Jiwon said. The bonding is complete according to Velrathi law. The challenges were passed. But Minho, she's a high-ranking diplomat with centuries of responsibilities. And you're human. You have what, maybe 60 more years of life? She has 300. The math doesn't work. So that's it. It's over? Jiwon looked sad. I don't know. But you should focus on recovering and getting back to work. You're a hero now. The coalition wants you for the cultural exchange program. That night, Minho lay in his hospital bed, staring at the mark on his hand. It had faded to a pale silver, but was still visible. A permanent reminder of the most chaotic week of his life. He'd saved Earth's future. He'd become famous across the galaxy. He'd survived an assassination attempt. But somehow, all he could think about was Aravel's laugh. The way her eyes had softened when they talked. The fear in her voice when she thought he was dying. And now she was gone. The next day, Kyung discharged him. You're healing well. Try not to do anything stupid for at least a month. Minho went back to his quarters. They'd cleaned up the courtship flowers while he was in the hospital. Everything looked normal, like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just lived through something that changed everything. His communicator buzzed. He grabbed it eagerly, hoping it was Aravel. But it was just Doyeon, asking if he wanted to get dinner. Minho was about to respond when his door chimed. He opened it. Aravel stood there. She wasn't wearing her formal robes or her diplomatic mask. She wore simple travel clothes and looked tired. Her glowing eyes met his, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. You left, Minho said finally. I was preparing to, Aravel said. My ship leaves in 3 hours. I have duties, responsibilities that I can't ignore. I know. But I couldn't leave without talking to you. She stepped inside, and Minho closed the door. What you did in the assembly chamber was stupid? Minho offered. Was the bravest thing I've seen in 300 years. Aravel's voice was soft. You could have stayed safe. You could have let me die, and Earth would still have gained coalition membership. The Zelvik plot would have been exposed either way. I didn't think about any of that, Minho admitted. I just saw someone going to hurt you, and I couldn't let it happen. Aravel smiled. I know. That's what made it remarkable. She walked to his window, looking out at the stars. I've been thinking about what we said at the assembly. About not knowing if this can work. About the complications. Minho's chest felt tight. And I realized something. She turned to face him. I've spent 3 centuries calculating every move, every relationship, every decision. Always thinking about the long-term implications. Always being careful. She walked back to him. But you've taught me that some things are worth doing, even when they don't make logical sense. What are you saying? I'm saying that I have to leave. My duties require it. I'll be gone for months, maybe longer. And you have your own life to build here, helping humanity integrate with the coalition. She took his hand, the one with the bonding mark. But Velrethi bonds are designed to last across time and distance. We live for centuries. We expect to spend time apart, so this isn't goodbye? Minho asked. It's a see you later. Aravel's eyes glowed brighter. Court me properly, Minho of Earth. Not because a challenge demands it, but because you want to. Visit me when you can. Let me visit Earth. Let this grow at human speed instead of Velrethi expectations. And we'll see where it goes. That could take years, Minho said. I have centuries. Aravel smiled. And you've made me curious about how humans approach love. I want to find out. She leaned forward and kissed him. Her lips were cool, and Minho could feel the energy of her Velrethi biology mixing with his own enhanced chemistry. When she pulled back, they were both glowing slightly. I have to go, she whispered. But I'll send messages. And I'll come back. Promise? Promise. She walked to the door, then paused. And Minho? For what it's worth, you do have a nice ass too. Then she was gone, leaving Minho standing in his quarters, laughing despite everything. 6 months later, Minho stood at Earth's primary spaceport. He was wearing his new uniform official cultural exchange liaison for the Galactic Coalition. He'd spent the past months traveling, teaching other humans about alien customs, helping build bridges between Earth and dozens of species. It was exciting work. It was important work. But he'd be lying if he said he didn't check his communicator constantly, waiting for messages from a certain Velrethi dignitary. They came regularly. Short notes about her work, longer letters about her thoughts. Sometimes she sent him recordings of Velrethi music. Sometimes he sent her videos of Earth's oceans, which she'd never seen. And now, finally, she was coming to visit. The transport ship landed, and Minho's heart started racing. The doors opened. Passengers streamed out, humans returning from space, aliens visiting Earth for the first time. And then he saw her. Aravel stepped onto Earth soil for the first time. She squinted in the bright sunlight, clearly uncomfortable. But when she saw Minho, her face lit up with that genuine smile he'd first seen in the assembly. Still nervous? She asked as she reached him. Terrified, he admitted. Good. She took his hand, ignoring the stares of humans seeing their first Velrethi visitor. I've become fond of your panic. Now, you mentioned Earth has something called Korean barbecue. I'm curious if it pairs well with that kimchi you made me. As they walked together through the spaceport, Minho realized something. This wasn't a fairy tale ending. This was a beginning. A complicated, messy, cross-species beginning that would take years to figure out. There would be challenges, cultural misunderstandings, long separations. But it was real. And after everything, That was what mattered most. So, Aravel said as they reached his transport, "Tell me about Earth. I want to see everything." Minho smiled. "That's going to take a while." "I have time," she said. And the way she looked at him made it clear that she meant it. Years later, when people asked Ambassador Minho about the famous diplomatic incident, he would smile and say, "Sometimes the worst thing you can say becomes the best thing that ever happened to you." Though I still recommend thinking before speaking in diplomatic situations. And Lady Aravel, in her own speeches about human-Velrethi relations, would occasionally add with dry humor, "Humans taught us that sometimes honesty, even awkward honesty, is more valuable than perfect diplomacy," though their compliments still require refinement.